June 19th, 1953. Sing Sing Prison, Ossining, New York. The sun is setting over the Hudson River. Inside the gray stone walls of America's most infamous prison, the clock reads 7:45 p.m. In 15 minutes, 2 people will be strapped into an electric chair and killed by the government of the United States of America. Their names: Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Their crime: conspiracy to commit espionage, stealing the secret of the atomic bomb and giving it to the Soviet Union. Their sentence: death. But here's what makes this execution extraordinary. Here's what makes it different from every other execution in American history. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are not soldiers. They are not foreign agents. They are American citizens, a married couple, parents of 2 young boys, ages 6 and 10, and they are about to become the only American civilians ever executed for espionage in peacetime, the only husband and wife executed together, the only parents sent to the electric chair, leaving their children orphaned. Outside the prison walls, the scene is chaos. Over 5,000 people have gathered. Police barricades hold back the crowds. Some carry signs: "Mercy for the Rosenbergs, save them." Others shout, "Death to traitors, they deserve to burn." Protesters have been here for days. Around the world, millions more are watching. Paris, London, Rome, Tel Aviv. Demonstrations in every major city. Pope Pius X has appealed for clemency. Albert Einstein has written letters. Jean-Paul Sartre called this a legal lynching. Pablo Picasso painted a portrait of the Rosenbergs. But President Dwight Eisenhower has refused all appeals. The execution will proceed. Inside the prison, in separate cells, Julius and Ethel prepare to die. Julius is 35 years old, thin, bespectacled, a former electrical engineer. He's wearing a white shirt and dark pants. Prison issued. His last meal was untouched. He couldn't eat. Ethel is 37. Dark curly hair now streaked with gray from 2 years on death row. She's wearing a dark green dress with white polka dots. She chose it herself. She wanted to look dignified. They haven't seen each other in weeks. Death row protocol keeps them separated, but they've written letters, dozens of letters, to each other, to their sons, to the world. In her final letter to her children, Ethel wrote, "Always remember that we were innocent and could not wrong our conscience." The warden enters Julius's cell. "It's time." Julius stands. His legs are shaking, but he walks steadily down the corridor, past the other prisoners. Some shout encouragement, others turn away. He enters the death chamber. 26 witnesses sit behind a glass partition. Reporters, prison officials, government representatives. They watch in silence. The electric chair sits in the center of the room. Oak wood, leather straps, metal electrodes. It's called Old Sparky. It has killed hundreds. Guards escort Julius to the chair, strap his arms, his legs, his chest. They place a leather mask over his face, then a metal cap with a wet sponge on his head. The electrode. Rabbi Irving Koslow stands nearby, reciting Psalm 23 in Hebrew. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Julius refuses a final statement. The executioner, his face hidden behind a black hood, stands at the control panel. The warden gives the signal, a nod. The executioner pulls the switch. 2,000 volts surge through Julius Rosenberg's body. His fists clench. His body arches against the straps. Smoke rises from the electrode on his head. The first jolt lasts 10 seconds. Then they cut the power. The doctor steps forward, checks his pulse. Still alive. Another jolt. 15 seconds this time. The doctor checks again. Listens to his heart. One more time. The third jolt. 20 seconds. The doctor removes his stethoscope. Nods to the warden. Julius Rosenberg is dead. Time, 8:06 p.m. The guards remove the body. Wheel it away on a gurney. They clean the chair. Replace the sponge, prepare it again. Then they go to get Ethel. She's in her cell, sitting on her cot. Calm. eerily calm. She's been praying, or perhaps just thinking about her sons. The matron enters. "Mrs. Rosenberg, it's time." Ethel stands. She smooths her dress, fixes her hair. She wants to look composed. She will not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She walks down the same corridor her husband just walked. Her footsteps echo on the concrete floor. When she enters the death chamber, she sees the chair, still warm from Julius's body. She pauses for just a moment, then continues forward. She kisses the prison matron on the cheek. "Thank you for your kindness," she whispers. The guards strap her in, arms, legs, chest, the leather mask, the electrode cap. The same witnesses watch. Some are crying now. Even hardened reporters feel sick. The executioner stands ready. The warden signals. The switch is pulled. But something goes wrong. The first jolt doesn't kill Ethel. Her body convulses. The power cuts. The doctor checks. Her heart is still beating. The witnesses gasp. This isn't supposed to happen. Another jolt. Longer this time. The doctor checks again. Still alive. A third jolt. Her heart keeps beating. The executioner looks at the warden. What now? They administer a fourth jolt, then a fifth. Smoke begins to rise from beneath the leather cap. A burning smell fills the room. Witnesses cover their mouths. Finally, the doctor checks one last time. He turns to the warden and nods. Ethel Rosenberg is dead. Time, 8:16 p.m. It took 5 electric shocks to kill her. Some witnesses will have nightmares about this night for the rest of their lives. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg are dead, the first and only American civilians executed for espionage in peacetime. Outside, the crowd erupts. Some scream in anguish, others cheer. In a small apartment in New York City, 2 young boys, Michael, age 10, and Robert, age 6, have just become orphans. This is the story of how we got here. The story of the Rosenbergs, the atomic spies, the couple who divided a nation, the parents who chose ideology over survival, and the question that haunts us 70 years later. Were they guilty of the crime they died for? Or were they martyrs of Cold War paranoia, sacrificed to satisfy America's rage and fear? This is their story. Every detail is documented. Every fact is verified. And it will disturb you. To understand why Julius and Ethel Rosenberg died in an electric chair, you have to understand where they came from, the world that shaped them, the beliefs that defined them. Julius Rosenberg was born on May 12, 1918, on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. If you've never been to the Lower East Side in the early 20th century, imagine this. Tenement buildings packed with immigrant families. 6 people to a room. No heat in winter, no air in summer. Rats in the hallways. Cholera in the streets. Julius's parents, Harry and Sophie, were Orthodox Jews who fled persecution in Poland. They arrived at Ellis Island with nothing. Harry opened a small repair shop. He worked 16-hour days, fixing radios, toasters, anything people brought in. They were poor, desperately poor. But they valued education. Jewish immigrant families saw education as the only escape from poverty. Julius was small, shy, bookish. He had thick glasses and bad posture. Other boys played stickball in the street. Julius read science books. He was brilliant. Not just smart, brilliant. He could understand complex electrical circuits at age 12. He built his own radio from scrap parts. In 1934, at 16, Julius was admitted to the City College of New York, CCNY, free tuition. It was called the Harvard of the Proletariat, the place where poor Jewish and Italian kids could rise. But CCNY in the 1930s was also something else, a hotbed of radical politics. This was the Great Depression. 1 in 4 Americans was unemployed. Bread lines stretched for blocks. Men sold apples on street corners for nickels. Families lost their homes. Children went hungry. Capitalism, it seemed to many young people, had failed. Meanwhile, in the Soviet Union, propaganda told a different story. full employment, free health care, workers' paradise, equality for all. It was a lie, of course. Stalin was murdering millions. But from New York, the Soviet Union looked like hope. Julius joined the Young Communist League in 1936. He attended meetings in cramped apartments, read Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, argued about workers' rights and revolution late into the night. He wasn't violent, he wasn't angry, he was idealistic. He genuinely believed that communism would create a fairer world, a world where his parents wouldn't have to work 16 hours a day just to survive. In December 1936, Julius attended a union meeting, a fundraiser for striking workers. That's where he met her, Ethel Greenglass. Ethel was born on September 28, 1915. Also Lower East Side, also poor, also Jewish. But Ethel was different from Julius. She was passionate, loud, theatrical. She loved to sing. She performed in amateur theater productions. She had dreams of becoming an actress or a singer. But dreams don't pay rent. So Ethel worked as a secretary for a shipping company, typing, filing, answering phones, making $25 a week. She hated it. She felt trapped. Then she discovered labor organizing. She helped organize a strike at her company. 150 women walked off the job demanding better wages and safer conditions. The company fired her for union activities. Ethel didn't care. She'd found her purpose. Workers' rights, social justice, the cause. She joined the Communist Party. She attended every meeting. She sang at rallies. She believed, with every fiber of her being, that the workers would rise. When she met Julius at that union meeting, they recognized each other instantly. Kindred spirits, true believers. They fell in love over their shared convictions. They married on June 18, 1939. A small ceremony, a rabbi, a few friends. They moved into a tiny apartment on the Lower East Side. 2 rooms, a shared bathroom down the hall. Julius graduated in 1939 with a degree in electrical engineering. In 1940, he got a job with the U.S. Army Signal Corps. Government work, security clearance, $2,000 a year. It was good money. In 1943, their first son, Michael, was born. In 1947, their second son, Robert, arrived. From the outside, they looked like thousands of other young American families. Working father, stay-at-home mother, 2 kids, an apartment in the city. But inside that apartment, Julius and Ethel weren't just raising children. They were raising revolutionaries. They spoke to their sons about injustice, inequality, the Soviet dream. And beneath it all, something else was happening. Julius Rosenberg wasn't just an engineer, he was building a spy network. The exact moment Julius Rosenberg became a Soviet spy is unclear. But by 1942, he was active. His Soviet handler was a man named Alexander Feklisov, codename Alexander. They met in bars, parks, movie theaters. Julius would bring documents, diagrams, technical specifications. Alexander would provide money and instructions. Julius's specialty was recruiting. He had a gift for it. He could identify people with access to valuable information, people who were sympathetic to communism, people who felt undervalued, underpaid, or ideologically motivated. His method was subtle. He never started with, "Will you commit espionage?" He started with ideology. Don't you think the Soviets deserve to share in scientific progress? Don't you think one country shouldn't have all the power? He recruited several engineers from his college days, Joel Barr, Alfred Sarant, Morton Sobel, all passed technical information about military electronics and radar, but Julius's most significant recruitment was personal. David Greenglass, Ethel's younger brother. David was born in 1922, 7 years younger than Ethel. He wasn't intellectual like Julius. He was a machinist, practical, good with his hands, not particularly political. In 1943, David married Ruth Prince, a shy, quiet girl, very much in love with David. In 1944, David was drafted into the U.S. Army. He was trained as a machinist and assigned to a military base. But not just any base. Los Alamos, New Mexico, the Manhattan Project. the most secret location in the United States, where the world's greatest scientists, Robert Oppenheimer, Enrico Fermi, Niels Bohr, were building the atomic bomb. David didn't work with the scientists. He was a low-level machinist. He made parts, molds, components, but he saw things, blueprints, designs, technical drawings. He didn't understand the physics, but he understood the mechanics. In January 1945, David came home to New York on furlough. He visited his sister and brother-in-law. That evening in the Rosenberg apartment, Julius made his pitch. "David, you're in an incredible position. You're working on the most important scientific project in history, but here's the thing. America shouldn't have a monopoly on this weapon. If only one country has the atomic bomb, they'll dominate the world. There will be no peace." David listened. Julius continued. "The Soviet Union is our ally. They're fighting the Nazis alongside us. They've lost 20 million people in this war. They deserve to share in this discovery. It will create balance. It will prevent war." It sounded reasonable. David wasn't a spy. He was just helping an ally. Ethel was present during this conversation. According to David's later testimony, she encouraged him. "David, you can help bring peace to the world." David agreed. When he returned to Los Alamos, he began his work as a spy. He couldn't photograph anything. Security was too tight. So he memorized. He looked at blueprints during the day. At night, he sketched them from memory. The implosion lens, the detonator design, the shape of the plutonium core. When David came home on leave in February 1945, he brought his sketches to Julius. They met in the Rosenberg apartment. Julius examined the drawings. His eyes widened. This was gold. This was exactly what Moscow wanted. According to David's testimony, Ethel typed up his handwritten notes on her typewriter. She made them cleaner, more professional, easier for the Soviets to understand. Julius photographed everything and passed it to his handler. The information went to Moscow. Soviet scientists studied every line, every measurement, every detail, but the most critical handoff was yet to come. In June 1945, David came home again. This time, he brought something extraordinary, a complete description of the bomb's triggering mechanism, the Fat Man plutonium implosion design, the exact design that would be dropped on Nagasaki. Julius wasn't taking chances with this one. He arranged a different courier. A man named Harry Gold was sent to Albuquerque to meet David. They had a recognition signal. Gold would say, "I come from Julius." David would respond with a torn piece of a Jell-O box that matched the piece Gold carried. It sounds like a spy movie, but it happened exactly like this. The meeting took place on June 3, 1945, in David's small apartment. David handed over his notes. Gold gave him $500. Gold took the documents to New York, passed them to his Soviet handler. The information went to Moscow on a diplomatic flight within 48 hours. 2 months later, on August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 70,000 people died instantly. Another 70,000 died later from radiation. 3 days later, August 9th, a second bomb destroyed Nagasaki. 40,000 dead immediately. The war ended. Japan surrendered. The atomic age had begun, and the Soviet Union was desperate to catch up. Soviet scientists worked around the clock. They had intelligence from multiple sources. Klaus Fuchs, a German-born physicist at Los Alamos, had been passing information since 1941. Theodore Hall, another Los Alamos scientist, also spied for the Soviets. And the Rosenberg network provided technical details about the bomb's construction. The Soviets pieced it together like a jigsaw puzzle. Fuchs gave them the physics. Hall gave them the design specifications. The Rosenbergs gave them the engineering details. American intelligence predicted the Soviets wouldn't have the bomb until 1953 at the earliest, maybe 1955. The U.S. had the best scientists, the most resources, the industrial capacity, But on August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb at a test site in Kazakhstan, 4 years ahead of American predictions. President Harry Truman was informed immediately. He was stunned. Already? How is that possible? The CIA began investigating. How did the Soviets build the bomb so fast? The answer: espionage. And the Rosenberg network was a significant part of it. The world had changed overnight. 2 superpowers, both with atomic weapons. The Cold War, which had been tense but manageable, suddenly became existential. If war broke out, millions, maybe hundreds of millions, would die in nuclear fire. America needed a scapegoat, someone to blame, someone to punish. The hunt for atomic spies began. February 2, 1950. London, England. British intelligence arrested Klaus Fuchs. Under interrogation, he confessed. He had been passing atomic secrets to the Soviets since 1941. He named his American contact, Harry Gold. The FBI arrested Harry Gold in Philadelphia on May 22, 1950. Gold broke immediately. He had no training, no loyalty, no ideology. He was just a courier. He told the FBI everything. He described meetings with multiple spies. And he mentioned one in Albuquerque, a machinist. He even remembered the torn Jello box recognition signal. The FBI didn't have a name yet, but they had enough to start investigating Los Alamos machinists. On June 15, 1950, FBI agents knocked on David Greenglass's door in New York. David opened the door. He saw the badges. His face went white. "David Greenglass, we need to talk." They took him to FBI headquarters, interrogated him for hours. David was terrified. His wife, Ruth, was pregnant with their second child. He had a life, a job, a future. The FBI agents laid it out. "We have Harry Gold's testimony. We have records showing you were at Los Alamos. We have evidence you met with Gold. If you cooperate, we can help you. If you don't, you'll face the death penalty." David broke. He told them everything: the sketches, the meetings with Julius, the money, the Jello box, all of it, and he named Julius Rosenberg as the one who recruited him. The FBI moved fast. On July 17, 1950, they arrested Julius at his apartment. Julius denied everything. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm an engineer, not a spy." But the FBI had David's testimony. They had Harry Gold's corroboration. They had intercepted Soviet cables from the Venona project that mentioned an agent codenamed Antenna and later Liberal. Handwriting analysis suggested Julius. The FBI interrogated Julius for days. He refused to cooperate, refused to name names, invoked the Fifth Amendment over and over. The prosecutors were furious. They had expected Julius to crack, to flip, to give them the entire network. Instead, he stayed silent. So they made a decision, a brutal decision. If Julius won't talk, we'll make him talk. On August 11, 1950, FBI agents came for Ethel. She was home with her 2 sons. Michael was 7, Robert was 3. They arrested her in front of her children. Michael screamed, Robert cried. Ethel tried to stay calm. "It's okay, boys. Mommy will be back soon. This is a mistake." But it wasn't a mistake. It was strategy. The FBI and prosecutors believed that if they arrested Ethel, Julius would cooperate to save her. He would confess. He would name names. He would give them the network. But Julius didn't break. And neither did Ethel. Both maintained their innocence. Both refused to cooperate. Both invoked the Fifth Amendment. The prosecutors were enraged. Assistant Irving Sapol reportedly said, "If they won't cooperate, we'll make an example of them. We'll seek the death penalty for both." And they did. The trial began on March 6, 1951, in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. Judge Irving Kaufman presided. He was 40 years old, Jewish, from New York. He wanted to prove that Jewish Americans were loyal, that they weren't soft on communism. This trial was his chance to make a statement. The lead prosecutor was Irving Sapol, assisted by a young lawyer named Roy Cohn. Cohn would later become famous as Senator Joseph McCarthy's chief counsel during the Red Scare. The defense was led by Emanuel Block, a left-wing lawyer with limited criminal trial experience. The jury, 12 men and women, all white, mostly working class. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The key witness was David Greenglass. David took the stand and described everything: how Julius recruited him, how he stole sketches from Los Alamos, how Ethel typed his notes, how Harry Gold came to Albuquerque with money. The defense attorney cross-examined him. "Mr. Greenglass, isn't it true that you're testifying against your sister to save yourself?" David hesitated. Then, "I'm telling the truth." "Isn't it true that the government threatened to prosecute your wife Ruth unless you testified?" "They gave me a choice." "So you chose to condemn your sister to save your wife?" Silence. The defense argued that David was lying, that he was a self-serving witness, trading his sister's life for his own freedom. But the jury believed him. Harry Gold also testified. He corroborated David's story. Yes, he met David in Albuquerque. Yes, there was a Jell-O box recognition signal. Yes, he took documents. Morton Sobel, Julius's friend, was also on trial. He was accused of helping recruit engineers and pass military radar secrets. The evidence against him was circumstantial, but the most controversial part of the trial was the evidence against Ethel. What did Ethel actually do? According to David, she was present at meetings. She knew about the spying, and most damning, she typed David's handwritten notes to make them clearer for the Soviets. That was it. Her crime: typing notes, being present, knowing. She never stole documents, never met Soviet agents, never recruited anyone. The defense argued she's a housewife, a mother. She's guilty of nothing but loyalty to her husband. The prosecution countered, conspiracy doesn't require committing the crime yourself. If you knowingly help someone commit a crime, you're guilty of that crime. Both Julius and Ethel testified in their own defense. When asked, "Are you a member of the Communist Party?" both invoked the Fifth Amendment. When asked, "Did you pass atomic secrets to the Soviet Union?" both denied it, but invoked the Fifth on related questions. This refusal enraged the jury. In 1951, America, invoking the Fifth Amendment, was seen as an admission of guilt. Innocent people don't hide behind constitutional protections. The trial concluded on March 29, 1951. The jury deliberated for less than 8 hours. The verdict: guilty. Julius Rosenberg, guilty on all counts. Ethel Rosenberg, guilty on all counts. Morton Sobel, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Ethel collapsed in her chair. Julius closed his eyes. Michael and Robert, too young to attend, were at home with Ethel's mother. Sentencing came a week later. Judge Kaufman delivered a speech that lasted over 30 minutes. It was passionate, angry. He called the crime worse than murder. "I consider your crime worse than murder. Plain, deliberate, contemplated murder is dwarfed in magnitude by comparison with the crime you have committed. In committing the act of murder, the criminal kills only his victim. The immediate family is brought to grief, and when justice is meted out, the chapter is closed. But in your case, I believe your conduct in putting into the hands of the Russians the A-bomb years before, our best scientists predicted Russia would perfect. The bomb has already caused, in my opinion, the communist aggression in Korea, with the resultant casualties exceeding 50,000, and who knows but that millions more of innocent people may pay the price of your treason. Indeed, by your betrayal, you undoubtedly have altered the course of history to the disadvantage of our country." He paused. The courtroom was silent. "I have deliberated for hours, days, and nights. I have carefully weighed the evidence. The defendant, Julius Rosenberg, 35 years of age, I hereby sentence you to death. The defendant, Ethel Rosenberg, 37 years of age, I hereby sentence you to death. The execution shall be carried out during the week of May 21st, 1951. Ethel gasped. Julius stared straight ahead. Morton Sobel received 30 years in prison. David Greenglass would later receive 15 years. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sent to Sing Sing prison to await execution. The Rosenbergs were held in separate wings of Sing Sing. They could see each other once a week through a mesh screen. They could not touch. They communicated through letters. Their lawyers immediately filed appeals. The case became an international sensation. Protests erupted worldwide. Paris, London, Rome, Tel Aviv, Buenos Aires, Tokyo. Millions of people marched. Pope Pius XII had issued a public appeal for clemency. Albert Einstein wrote to President Truman, calling the death sentence incomprehensible. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote essays condemning the trial. Pablo Picasso painted portraits of Julius and Ethel. In the United States, opinion was sharply divided. Many Americans supported the execution. This was 1951 to 1953, the height of the Cold War. The Korean War was raging. Senator Joseph McCarthy was hunting communists in Hollywood and government. The Soviet Union had just detonated the hydrogen bomb. Fear was everywhere. Fear of nuclear war, fear of communist infiltration, fear of betrayal. Conservatives argued, the Rosenbergs are traitors. They gave Stalin the bomb. They have American blood on their hands. They deserve to die. But others protested. Liberals, intellectuals, civil libertarians, many Jewish groups. The trial was unfair. The evidence against Ethel was weak. The death sentence is barbaric. They have 2 young children. Legal scholars pointed out problems with the trial. David Greenglass was an accomplice testifying to save himself. His testimony should have been corroborated by other evidence. It wasn't. The death penalty for espionage was almost never used, and never in peacetime for a non-military crime. Ethel's role was minimal. At most, she knew about Julius's activities. That doesn't warrant execution. The appeals went to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Denied. To the Supreme Court. Denied. In January 1953, Dwight Eisenhower became president. The Rosenbergs' lawyers immediately appealed to him for clemency. Eisenhower refused. He issued a statement. I can only say that, by immeasurably increasing the chances of atomic war, the Rosenbergs may have condemned to death tens of millions of innocent people all over the world. The execution of 2 human beings is a grave matter. But even graver is the thought of the millions of dead whose deaths may be directly attributable to what these spies have done. When asked specifically about Ethel, Eisenhower said, in this instance, it is the woman who is the strong and recalcitrant character, the man is the weak one. She has obviously been the leader in everything they did in the spy ring. This was not supported by evidence, but it revealed the thinking. Ethel, by being uncooperative, was seen as defiant, unwomanly, dangerous. Meanwhile, in Sing Sing, Julius and Ethel clung to hope. They wrote letters to their sons almost daily. Ethel's letters are heartbreaking. Dearest, sweetest boys, your daddy and I love you more than words can tell. We are innocent of any wrongdoing. We have been victims of a terrible injustice. But we know that someday the truth will come out. Until then, be strong. Be good. Remember us with love. Michael and Robert were living with Ethel's mother, Tessie Greenglass. But Tessie was overwhelmed. She couldn't care for them. So they were passed to friends. Then to the family of their father's lawyer, Emmanuel Bloch. The boys rarely saw their parents. When they did visit Sing Sing, they couldn't touch them. They could only talk through mesh screens. Michael later wrote, I was 10 years old. I knew my parents were going to die, and I didn't understand why. On June 15, 1953, the Supreme Court denied a final stay of execution. Justice William O. Douglas had granted a temporary stay, arguing that the legal basis for the death sentence was questionable, but the full court overruled him 6-3. The execution was scheduled for June 19th at 11 p.m., but Jewish groups protested. That's after sundown on Friday, the Jewish Sabbath, Executing Jews on the Sabbath would be a desecration. The government moved the execution to 8 p.m. before sundown to avoid the controversy. June 19, 1953. The final day. Julius and Ethel were allowed one last visit. They sat across from each other through the mesh screen. They couldn't hold hands. They couldn't kiss goodbye. They talked about their sons. "Tell them we love them," Ethel said. "Tell them we were brave. Tell them we died for what we believed in." Julius nodded. He couldn't speak. He was crying. At 7:30 p.m., they were separated for the last time. At 7:50 p.m., the warden came for Julius. "It's time." Julius walked calmly. He'd made peace with his fate. The death chamber was small, bare concrete walls, the electric chair in the center, 26 witnesses behind glass. The guard strapped Julius into the chair. Ankles, wrists, chest, head. Rabbi Kozlau recited prayers in Hebrew. Julius refused any final words. At 8:04 p.m., the executioner pulled the switch, 3 jolts. Julius Rosenberg was dead at 8:06 p.m. His body was removed. They prepared the chair for Ethel. At 8:11 p.m., she entered. She walked slowly but steadily. Her face was pale but calm. She saw the chair, the straps, the electrodes, the place where her husband had just died. She kissed the matron goodbye. She sat in the chair. They strapped her in. One of the witnesses later wrote, "She looked like she was going to sleep. No fear, no crying, just resignation." At 8:13 p.m., the executioner pulled the switch. But Ethel was strong. Her body was small, but her heart kept beating. They shocked her again and again. After the 3rd shock, the doctor checked her pulse, still alive. A 4th shock, a 5th. Smoke began to rise. The smell of burning flesh filled the room. Several witnesses vomited. One fainted. Finally, at 8:16 p.m., the doctor confirmed. Ethel Rosenberg was dead. It had taken 5 shocks to kill her. Witnesses said her execution was botched, barbaric, but it was done. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, husband and wife, were dead. The bodies were taken to a funeral home in Brooklyn. On June 21, 1953, the funeral was held at Wellwood Cemetery. 10,000 people attended. The crowd overflowed into the streets. Some came to mourn, others to protest. Police kept order. The Rosenbergs were buried side by side. Michael was 10. Robert was 6. They stood at the grave, too shocked to cry. They had become orphans. Their parents chose death over cooperation, chose ideology over survival, chose the cause over their children. The boys were eventually adopted by Abel and Anne Meeropol, a couple who believed in the Rosenbergs' innocence. They took the name Meeropol. They grew up knowing their parents were executed as atomic spies. For decades, the question remained, were Julius and Ethel guilty? In 1995, the U.S. government released the Venona decrypts. These were Soviet intelligence cables intercepted and decoded during the 1940s. The cables proved Julius was a Soviet spy. His code name, Antenna, later Liberal. He recruited agents. He passed secrets. He was guilty. But Ethel? The cables barely mention her. One cable refers to her as someone who knows about Julius's work, but no evidence she actively participated. The key evidence against Ethel was David Greenglass's testimony that she typed his notes. In 2001, David gave an interview to 60 Minutes. He admitted, "I lie